Welcome back to another episode of the Higher Life Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about how to cope with stress and avoid burnout in the corporate environment, which we feel is a very timely topic given the state of the world and the economy. Unfortunately, lots of people around the world have been impacted by recent layoffs, and as a consequence of that, a lot of colleagues, ourselves included, we find ourselves picking up a lot of the work, right? We're doing the job of 4 or 5 people, because of the reduced headcount internally. So, a lot of people are going through it, and we want to talk about some of the tactics and strategies that we've learned throughout the years being in high pressure environments on how we cope with corporate stress and avoid burnout. So, without further ado, maybe I'll kick it off to, let's say, Steve. Start with far left. So maybe talk about your experience in your career, the times that have been most stressful for you. Feel free to share some stories and how you maybe initially reacted and then learned to cope eventually.
Yeah, I mean, in the tech recruitment space, I think if you don't know already, it's sales, right? It's pure sales driven, and with that stress, with sales, there's targets, and the targets is where I think a lot of people feel the stress from, firstly. And then in addition to that, you also get internal pressure from your stakeholders. You have people barking up your tree, breathing down your neck. And on top of that, you're competing, right? And the fact that it's a competition in general, that feeling of, when you're about to line it up and before the gun goes off, you're just kind of scared, nervous, the anxiety, and you're just kind of like, you have to be in the zone. You have to have the proper mindset. And I would say that in the early part of my career, when we started in the agency world, that's kind of where a lot of the stress came from, is the fact that it's a competitive environment, it's sales driven, and there's targets, those 3. And I remember one of the most stressful times is we would work. I think there was one day we came on with a weekend to work. That's how stressful it was. It was so much workload. And looking back, I think I acknowledge now is the first company we worked for, they ran a really lean ship, a very lean ship. And when a company runs lean, you're doing the work of maybe 2 or 3 people equivalent in maybe a different environment. And that's kind of what we faced. And I remember there's one time where we were assigned a position and we had a deadline of tomorrow, and this is 6 p.m. I didn't find someone. And I remember making a call at 8 p.m. on a weekday to find that candidate, and it felt really good. But at the same time, stress is also dependent on yourself as well. It depends how tough you are as an individual. I'm personally very tough on myself. So I don't want to miss a deadline. That's just the nature that I am. And I remember I knew I just had to do it and had to cope with it regardless. And it felt good delivering, but at the same time, it was rough. It takes a toll on your body mentally. I remember, I think there was a period of time where I was just gaining a lot of weight because you eat like trash. I think that's a byproduct of stress. I stress eat. So I eat a lot of chips, and I'm sure you guys know, junk food. And usually I would cope with stress by just working out and just hanging out with friends, but you can't really do that when work is piling up,
So totally agree with you. In high pressure environments, when you have that sort of pressure on yourself to deliver and not miss those deadlines, it's a lot of things kind of fall through the cracks, and taking care of yourself, I think, has to be priority through those times. If you were to tell your younger self, go back in that situation, tell yourself anything, what would you say? Top 3 coping strategies, tactics, mechanisms, just things to keep in mind as you're going through the motion.
That's a tough one. I'm thinking about that, and I don't know, naturally speaking, I'm hard on myself. So it's really maybe realize, and then actually one coping mechanism that really helped is realize the bigger picture. As long as no one's dying, literally, what's the worst thing that can happen? Always thinking about the worst case scenario and accepting the fate and dealing with it as it comes. I think that's key. Is just kind of accepting that it's the worst case isn't as bad as what you think it is. And if you're okay with the worst case, then there goes a lot of stress. Just a second thing is building, I think just, it comes with time, is just you develop tough skin. I think that naturally comes. And I wish someone kept telling me that, don't worry, it gets a lot easier. And it did get easier. And I think I did have some people tell me it's easy, but at the same time, it's it was still stressful. It's hard to avoid. Third thing to help cope with stress, I would say, is take your vacation. Here's a story I remember having when I was put in training in the first year. I showed up to I think it was a time management course, and I sat at this table, and there's this gentleman dressed up in a suit. He has a Rolex on. I noticed the watch, and I was like, oh, this guy must be successful. And then I found out during that course he was a divorce lawyer. So he sees a lot of stuff, and as a result of stress, divorces happen, I'm sure. And he was forced to attend this time management course because his wife said he needed to manage his time better, ironically speaking. And I remember one key takeaway that I still take away till this day. I asked at the end of, this was when I was really young, straight out of university, right? So I asked him, hey man, like what's one piece of advice you would give to yourself, like to someone young, entering the corporate environment, going into a stressful environment? And he said, take time off. This is coming from a corporate lawyer. That's all he said. And it really stuck with me. I'm like, if a a divorce lawyer is telling you to take time off, he must have seen a lot of stuff, to tell that. And I think taking time and knowing that you should take time off, the work will always be there. That's another useful lesson that I think someone told me in the industry, is like the work will always be there. It's knowing when to walk away and go home and enjoy your life. I think those two things, for me at least.
Yeah. And to add to that, I'd say that when you're taking that time off, it's really important to take that time off. Do not log back on. Don't check your laptop. Don't check emails. Don't pick up calls, work calls. It's really important to reset. And I feel like, saying all this, I'm not saying I'm the best at it, because I've been guilty. I've been that person where, and I actually did this. I took time off, and the entire road trip, I was on the phone the entire day trying to close a deal. And in retrospect, it just wasn't worth it. I didn't come back feeling refreshed. And this is something that I feel even now I truthfully still struggle with, like taking time off and feeling like not feeling guilty about it. But it's so important. I feel like it's so important, especially in a high pressure environment, to really have that just mental reset. Just log off, forget about everything, forget about work, and then come back ready to go.
Don't look at your work phone. Don't look at emails.
Easier said than done, right? I think we were just talking about it earlier, how like you get so much, even just getting Slack messages is stressful.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like getting pinged by, or having things come into the environment that aren't supposed to be in the environment is just leads to stress.
We have a special guest.
Yeah, we have a special guest right now.
On the lap. But you know what's funny, and I don't know if you remember this, Steve. When we were in Thailand, we were sitting in Phuket on a rooftop having drinks, and you were actually on your phone working. And I forget why. I can't remember if that was like our P Club year, maybe. But I remember that and thinking, man, it sucks to be him right now.
Because work is life, at least at that time. And you realize, I mean, that's an early, I don't want to call it a mistake, an error, but like it's one of those things early in your career, you think you throw everything you got at your job, right? And that's what I did. And over time, you kind of learn to walk away.
I think it's like when you're young, you want to prove yourself to yourself and to others and to your peers, and that's why you want to put all that work into it, and you want to put your entire effort, like 110% all the time, just because you're so young and you want to be known as a good worker and all that type of stuff. So that's why you stress yourself out and you put so much pressure on yourself because of it.
Yeah, I guess. How about you, James? Like, how was it back then versus making the transition to corporate? Like, how were the differences in stress level, and how did you cope with the
Oh
stress?
Yeah, I think it's such a huge difference when it comes to, I would say, like work-life balance, from like a sales-driven environment to a more corporate environment. Sales, like you said, it's so competitive, and sometimes you're competitive to yourself because you want to continuously do better. You're competitive to other companies, but then you're also competitive to people in your own company, which is so crazy. So like you're competing with everyone all the time, and there's no breaks when it comes to competition, because if you're not getting that deal or getting that higher, then someone else is. And especially if your compensation is based off of how competitive you are and how good you are, then you have no option but to be as competitive and work even harder than the next guy. And I think that's really, when it comes to work and competition, especially in sales, that's all it really is. You're working harder than the next guy. And if everyone around you is working like crazy, then you have to be alongside with them, because there's no way that you're in a sales environment, you're working like 5-6 hours, everyone else is working 12 hours, and like you're doing better than them. There's like no way, I would say. So it's really about the work environment and who you surround yourself with. So if everyone else is competitive, everyone else is working crazy hours, you're doing the same thing. And that's where we came from. And that's the type of environment the agency and sales, kind of anything commission-based, kind of takes you. And then once you go salary, and that's where all your money comes from, and it's not based off of, how competitive you are or how hard you work, to like in comparison to other competitive people, then it becomes a lot less stressful and then like a lot better. And to your point, for me, when I was dealing with a lot of stress and all the competitiveness, like I stress ate, and I also drank a lot of alcohol. So I had like multiple bad vices where I was just like eating a lot and drinking a lot. And so my health deteriorated to a point where I just couldn't deal with it anymore, and I ended up quitting. And so like sometimes it gets to a point where you have to know when to remove yourself from the environment and prioritize your health. And like when you're younger and you're super energetic and like you want to prove yourself, you'll be able to put in that work. But you get to a point in your life where like, is this worth my health? And if the answer is no, then you gotta move on.
Yeah, sometimes the juice just isn't worth squeezing. Right?
Yeah, totally agree. I feel like for me, that hits home because I feel like I learned that the hard way when I ruptured my Achilles side.
Yeah.
I still don't walk the same today because of that. Sacrificed my health, gained a lot of weight, didn't really take care of myself, and then the moment I tried to get back into it, my body caught up. It's like, no,
that's true.
no, that's not who you are right now. So I think removing yourself from an environment that's causing tremendous amount of stress and leading to burnout, it's a good strategy, because when you think of your career, it's not just the one job that you have right now in this moment. Your career can be 20-30 years long, right? However old you are today. So you don't want this experience, this environment that you're in today, to jade your vision of what corporate life or whatever professional life really is. Like maybe it's just you in this moment, in this environment, it just doesn't work. So you need to remove yourself from it before you lose yourself.
And sometimes like when you're young and you're at your first job, you're pretty naive. You think that like your company is like, this is how it works everywhere. This is like, this is
sure.
normal.
100%.
For sure.
Right? You're so naive for like years and years. And then once you leave and you go somewhere else, like, oh, that was just a terrible workplace. You're like, oh.
What are you trying to say, James?
Like not everybody works, 10 to 12 hours a day and works weekends and works, all these like crazy competitive high pressure environments. So other people, other companies care about work-life balance and mental health and things of that nature.
Yeah, I will say not always, but sometimes. I mean, I think I can say it sometimes too. Like sometimes the grass is a little bit greener on the other side of what you think. You don't know what you don't know. To your point, right?
But that's the thing. Like you're right. Sometimes the grass isn't greener, but at least you got to try at least more than one company. Like if you're stuck in one company from graduation forever, like you never know what the differences are going to be. And so I do feel a little bad for people who have been at the same exact company for their entire life, and they have no idea. They'll never know, right?
Yeah. Curious to know from your side, Terrence, because of all three of us, you have family stresses because you're fresh dad, and
right.
how was that changed?
Like, does it increase, scale more stress?
I mean,
because that's a full-time job on its own, right?
It is. I can't downplay that at all. I feel like you learn to cope with it. It's just, I feel like the stresses of being a parent far outweigh the stress of a corporate job, because when you say it's not a corporate job isn't life or death, but if you don't take care of your baby, that is
that's
life
true.
and death,
That's true.
right? So, for me, going back into the corporate world after taking my pat leave, it was a bit of an adjustment because I was very sleep deprived, still am, operating on 3 hours of sleep right now. But you just learn to, I feel like mentally there's a shift there where you just learn to manage that stress a bit better. You really, what you said earlier, Steve, about like, your professional job not being like, we're not surgeons, we're not saving lives. It's not the end of the world if you don't hit that deadline. Like that actually starts to like ingrain itself. I know
sinks
the
in,
reality
right?
sinks in. Like you say it, but like until that really sinks in, I don't think you feel it. And I think it's that shift in mindset. Like when you really let that sink in for a second, it takes some of the stress away from the job itself. And that's going to be okay. Because I think half the battle with the stress and anxiety comes from just overthinking. It's like, okay, what if I miss this deadline? Oh, man, what's going to happen to me? It's the end of the world.
Pressures
Right,
too from
right.
Right.
management, right? Management make it sound worse than it is. I remember there were so many
That's
times
true.
we've all had stories, and one story I remember is like I didn't drop the ball. It's just we didn't close a position, and one of the account executives made it sound like it was the end of the world, and I'm like, come on, man. There's people are dying of hunger out there, and here we are.
That's true.
Like you're yelling at me for something that we did everything we could, and you're making it sound like it's the end of the world, that we're gonna lose the account. Like some cases yes, but like this case no. So yeah.
So for me, it's going back to work. It actually, I don't know. It's not that I'm any less stressed. It's just now there's clarity in what my true north is, and for me, it's like, I will do anything and everything for my child. There's nothing that you can tell me at work about my delivery, my effort, that doesn't align with what I'm trying to provide for my kids. So if at the end of the day, I know I gave it my all, I'm okay with that. I'm actually content with that. Like the younger me was obviously very, very competitive. It was about being the guy, hitting certain,
the best of the best.
milestones, like in terms of like dollar figure values, or like there was a number, like always a target. Now it's shifted a little. Obviously there's still that drive and want to succeed and be better than average. Like that pressure that pressure that I put on myself never goes away. I think it's just, there's people out there that are probably like me where it's just in your nature, right? It's just who you are. But now it's just, I'm clear in what I'm doing it for. And at the end of the day, if I can shut off the laptop and just look at my kid and just see him smile at me, I feel like I've done a great job, regardless of whether or not the results were there. Like I know that's funny to say, but like there's a certain standard when it comes to the quality of work that I feel like I can produce. I'll always hold myself to that. And regardless of whether or not I hit that deadline, I'll always strive to, but I know what's really important deep down, and that's remove some of the corporate stress from my life.
No, you prioritize, right? What's important.
Yeah.
And then to your point about like shutting down the laptop, like how do you guys feel about setting boundaries? Like I've been really much better at setting boundaries at work, between work and life now than I did way back then when I first started, with regards to like shutting down at 5 p.m., like done work, not working any extra hours on the weekends or even at evenings type of thing. Like I've been really good at that now. And I had to develop that practice over years. And it's really helped with my stress. But I know back then I was like, 5 o'clock, that's when work starts. And like even though you started at 8 a.m. and like you just keep going and going and going, the lines between work and life was always blurred back then. But now I feel like there's a clear like line that I made.
I would kind of disagree, if anything, with you on the blurred piece, because I think with the whole remote thing, I think it got blurred. To be honest, like for me, my mentality, and it always was, is like I would stand back in like when things were on site and in office, I would stay until the work is done so that the second I leave, I can just leave everything at work and physically feel that I'm going home. That was me. And then when I work from home, I felt like there were times where it just never ended.
Really?
Because you got back the time in the commute, so you're like, oh, I'm here anyways. Why not just squeeze an hour in?
I did hear about that, yeah.
But I will also admit, like, was it less stressful? I would say yes, because people are digitally yelling at you instead of in person yelling at you. There is no, I will tell you this to anyone like entering their careers, like there's no different. There's like, it's a different experience having someone yell at you from a couple feet away in person, telling you to stop doing what you're doing and shut the front door and just like ream you out in person. It's different than virtual. I think that stress alone, like you can hide behind a screen, right?
Have there been times where you're looking at your Slack and it's like, shut the front door, Steve?
Other times like that?
Has there been times
in person?
No, on Slack.
No. I don't get that on Slack. I work for a great company, so we don't do that. We treat people with respect and kindness, but there are people that you will run into in your career that will like just talk like they're in person, and it's rough, right? And that's what I mean when I disagree with you on that part. It's just drawing the line. I felt like when I was at home, it was somewhat less stressful, that the work was still there.
But do you think it's a good thing that your line is blurred while working remotely?
No, personally, no. I preferred going. It's just a personality of myself, though. I feel like, because I don't, even for studying, for example, I like to be out of the house to study, to get in the zone. Same with work. If I'm at home,
you want to separate the environment.
Correct. I think we had this chat in the past in the previous podcast of hybrid and stuff like that. But personally, I like separating it, and it stresses me out that I'm at home because it feels like it's still work.
Yeah. Well, that's my point.
I mean?
It's like you need that separation and those boundaries set in order to have a better
So
work-life
how did you
balance.
do it? How did you separate? Because you were remote for a while. You were working at one of the companies that supported remote. What are some strategies that you implemented to help you cut it off at 5 or whatever the time would be?
I had really good strategies where I would be doing a lot of walks throughout the day, like multiple walks throughout the day to be able to, separate my environment a little bit. I had an area where I just did my work and work only versus where I did like my personal stuff. And I always shut down at 5. And so I made it like a habit of mine where like you couldn't even like you could set you out of office after 5, but like nobody, if someone even emails you, just think you get out of office, right? So like you really set those boundaries and set up your calendar like really, really strict to a point where like it automates itself essentially.
Do you feel that would have worked in your previous companies? Like obviously you worked in small and big and large. Like would it?
It
is
depends
it
on
all companies.
It really depends on the environment and the company that you work with. Some of them are more open to making sure that you have that time and space to do work-life balance, and others are like I said, if you're in a very competitive environment, very sales-driven, even when you're virtually or not virtually, like some of the times it just doesn't matter. Especially you want to get that deal, you want to get that commission. Like you have to do what you have to do in order to make a living, and that's the difference between the sales-driven commission environment versus a salary corporate environment.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, being in a sales role for so long, I feel like the lines have always been blurred, and I've just learned to, I don't know, I've adjusted, I guess you could say. I'll admit though, when we went fully remote because of, the whole vid situation, it was a bit of an adjustment because it felt like there was no separation. It was like work never ended because there was nothing to do. Also, like, what was there to do? You can't go outside anyways, so you might as well just work. But now I feel like I've actually learned to cope a little bit better. I don't know if I necessarily have a hard stop, but because I'm working from home, I'll go for that walk now. I'll take that break, 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. You're not under that constant pressure in a sales office environment where everyone's maybe hammering out the phones and people are watching. You kind of feel like you have to keep up with the optics. When you're at home, you get to really...
You have a little bit more autonomy.
A little bit more autonomy. Not to say that I don't didn't already have that. Especially when you have a good manager, you're given that flexibility and freedom, like they trust you, right? For me, it was there used to be like this sense of guilt about taking a step away to take that break.
Yeah.
Now I don't feel it. Now, like for me, it's mentally. I sort of understand that like at this time and stage in my life, I need that break to refresh and come back mentally ready to go. Like I'd rather take that break, come back and ready to play my A game than struggle through and be a B or C player. It just doesn't make sense. It's not a win for anybody if I operate in that way, right? So, you know, I'll go for breaks, and then knowing that I'll make that time back, whether it's after 5 or maybe on a weekend, doesn't matter. I just know that like I'll get my work done, and I feel good about that. The one hard rule that I did set for myself at some point, this was early in my career, was no checking emails in bed.
Oh, that's a good rule.
That's a slippery slope.
Yeah, once you start, you can't stop, right?
Yeah, there were times where like I'm about to go to bed, I see an email, and there goes my night. I'm not sleeping.
Yeah.
So I made a rule for myself because I've always had trouble sleeping. So once I'm in bed, I won't check my emails.
Yeah,
good on you.
That's good. That's a good rule.
Yeah, I need my sleep.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like just setting your own boundaries, knowing like yourself, and I think that really helps because if you don't set any boundaries, your whole life is going to be work.
You're not wrong. I mean, there's one time where I'm laughing because you're talking about boundaries and like checking emails and stuff. And I remember I'd be going to the gym at 6:30 on a Friday.
Oh yeah.
There's a story. So I would go to the gym at 6:30 on a Friday. Okay, like this is 6:30 on a Friday, end of the work week, and I get a call from my manager or boss to tell me, hey, we gotta close this down. And I'm like, it's a Friday. I'm at the gym.
Yeah.
Can this not wait till Monday? And you know, I was just like. He pushed back and said the client needed to get it done. And I was like, it's a Friday. Like, why are we doing this on a Friday? I did it anyways. And it was stressful because it's unneeded stress on a Friday.
It's true.
And the work week. Even if we get back to the client on a Friday at 6:30 p.m., they're not going to check it till Monday, realistically. Most of the time they're not. So I don't know. That was unnecessary stress in my opinion when like checking emails and stuff. Actually, it wasn't even me checking an email. I got a call. So that's one thing that you always kind of forget. Like I know, like it's
but you didn't have to answer.
That's true. You didn't have to answer.
I'm just saying.
Fair, but no, my boss. You never know. You know, we have a great relationship with him. Maybe he's called me for a beer. You know, give him the benefit of the doubt. It would have been first time or last time. You know,
how many times did you get a call for a beer on Friday night?
After that, I realized not enough times to.
Oh, so young and naive.
Not enough time to pick up.
but like, yeah, it's just de-stressing. Sometimes you just can't like they're calling you. It must be urgent. Like, there's nothing you got. There's only so much you can do.
Like to your point about consequences. Like we're not saving lives. Right?
I agree, and I tried to say, I was like, where's the fire, buddy? Where's the fire? Like, where's the fire? Where's the fire I got to put out? But my lesson from that, it was just like. Yeah, push back and just say, is anyone dying?
Is anyone dying? Are we? Yeah,
let's wait till Monday. And then he was very adamant. He's lucky he was my, like, you know, the the big boss. You know, if he was some other account executive or like someone else, I would have been like, you know what, we'll fly a kite. You know, it's Friday. Like we'll tackle it Monday. But yeah, there are times where. But then, yeah, I remember the complete opposite. I've had managers where it's like, hey, it's a Friday, work on a Monday.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I totally get where you're coming from, though. It's like big boss and
big boss, and that's just a stakeholder. It's like you can only push back so many times on that.
Like I can totally see myself being in sales. If I needed something done and it was a Friday, I'd call you too.
Oh God,
Steve, I need this done now.
It's gonna be a no for me. It's my boundaries have been set.
Depends on the company size. I feel like too. If you're in a smaller company, it's hard to say no. But when you're a big company, you can like, you know. You can. There's not much they can do.
I mean, it's still surprising when it happens. Like this time last year, I was that person calling somebody and saying, "Hey,
what goes around comes back around."
Now.
No, I
gotta go to dinner.
You know what that is? That usually is the case. It's poor planning. You know, on the person's point. You know,
It wasn't poor planning. It was more like negotiations took a while. Negotiations took a while, and
If it took a while, I could wait until Monday.
They said wait till Monday. What's one day? What's 48 hours?
We couldn't. We actually couldn't. It was end of year. We had a
sometimes
clock
it
that was
happens.
ticking.
That's part of the job. I feel like you know what I'd say. Sales, there's pressure, but in like full-time salary jobs, I think there's pressure too, because the expectation is, hey, we're paying you whether you work 7 hours or 8 hours. We're gonna bug you. I've seen it. Some companies they can't say for us. But
I haven't seen it, but I can see some other.
I think it probably depends on size of company.
Size of company and like what function you're in.
Industry, yeah. Like for example, today I know this morning, we were having lunch, a nice little lunch downtown, and someone else I know was having a meeting at 9:30 on a Saturday.
Whoa.
She was stressed.
What function?
Finance. This is finance world. So
if it's like fiscal year end and you're in finance, I can see how those deadlines and those pressure requires you to work extra and work outside of your normal hours. So I can see that.
But at the same time, I think the manager could have, this is my opinion, maybe do a later meeting on Friday, and spare the Saturday, because Saturday is...
Spare the Saturday, yeah.
Saturday night?
It's rough.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had I lied. I've worked on Saturday. We've all worked on Saturday.
We've all worked on Saturdays.
Not by choice, really, to be honest. It wasn't by choice. It wasn't even... It was more like voluntold. Hey, we have this project. We need people, and we need to all come in. Okay. Yeah.
But suffice to say, like, I'll ask both of you, like, all the extra hours, all the evenings and weekends, and all the extra effort that you put in, was it worth it?
I knew you were going to ask that. Terrence, go first.
That's a tough one.
That is?
I feel because I'm leaning towards yes, and I don't,
really?
and I don't want to say it, but I feel
explain
like
your reasoning.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the results were there. I was happy personally with the results. So was the team. We got the job done.
Yeah,
right?
but
so it wasn't for nothing.
Okay.
Right. I think if I were to knock on anything, like just it's like what happens afterwards after you sacrifice that one day on a weekend. Like is your management team coming back and saying, hey, we know you took one for the team, we're going to give you one back, like how you're compensated for it. So it's little things like that. And if you're in a good environment, there should be some of that reciprocated, right? But if it's not, then maybe
if it's not reciprocated,
if it's not reciprocated, then maybe it's time to really take a look at where you are and see if it makes sense to remove yourself from that environment, from that situation.
Okay, I can agree with that reasoning. Right. If it's reciprocated and like the company or your manager gives you whatever back from whatever you sacrificed, then that's fair.
Because I don't mind working hard. I'm a firm believer that teamwork makes the dream work. If we're all in the trenches together and we achieve something, great. But if we're making sacrifices, I would hope.
You would hope
that that's being recognized, and whether it's hey, you lost a day, so we're going to give you a day off, like in return, like whatever that reciprocation is. Like I'm hoping there's some of that, and if there isn't, and it's just like work all the way through, just wear multiple hats until you can't, then it's like, hey, you need to take a moment for yourself and just really think whether or not you're in the right environment, in the right place.
So one counter to this, like, how often do you think that happens overall in the corporate world, where the company does like even like give that back to you from all the sacrifices that you do? And I'm not talking about just personal experience, but what do you think about just every corporate like worker in general, like in corporate company?
Dude, I think it's manager to manager.
I think it's case by case.
I'm thinking it's.
You think some companies?
I don't think it's majority. I think majority of managers and companies won't give you that back. They'll let you sacrifice, and then they'll keep squeezing until there's nothing left. That's my personal opinion on overall.
It could be.
So I have a more pessimistic view of it. But
I mean, you might be right, but I think it's case to case. I mean, I think we've all heard. Yeah, I don't know. It's inconclusive. I wouldn't be able to put a number on it or like.
But I'm thinking it's higher than 50% on not getting it back.
Probably.
Yeah, Because at the end of the
Probably.
day, something's being exchanged. You know what I mean? You're getting time for money. So because of that, that alone should merit, like you're getting paid for the stress.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the mentality.
I feel like from personal experience, I've been fortunate to have some pretty great managers. Like the people that I report to, the ones where I really see them as leaders, like they've been very understanding and they do reciprocate in some
That's good.
way, shape, or form. But I do recognize that like it's probably not the case
Majority.
across the board.
Yeah.
So, you know, to anyone that's listening, I will say that there is hope out there. It's not.
There's hope.
if
No,
you're-
for sure.
If you happen to be reporting to someone that's
A good manager.
or
Well,
not so good,
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, yeah. Do you think there's more good managers out there than bad managers? That's the.
that's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
That's a
eh?
tough one.
Yeah.
Case by case. I feel like it's kind of to your point earlier though about like sticking to one company versus, you know, diversifying your skill set and seeing what's out there, right? Joining other companies, reporting to different managers, different teams. You don't have
Yeah.
to leave a company. You could leave the team and maybe cross into a different
It's
department, pick up a different role.
You don't know until you
don't know-
You don't know
You don't
until
know.
you try,
You don't know until you try.
right? So,
Yeah.
you know, I think going back to the main topic, coping with corporate stress, avoiding burnout, it's tactics like that, right? Just understanding like what is it in your environment that triggers you, whether it's like a manager that's not so understanding, or you know, just the nature of like the environment, the high pressure sales environment, for example.
Yeah.
Like, if that's what triggers you, maybe you're not made for that environment. Maybe you
true.
should cross departments just for
True.
that reason alone, right? So
Yeah.
it's understanding those triggers and then removing them, or at least taking a break, taking a well-deserved break.
I think, yeah. You talked about it like a little bit at the beginning, but man, taking vacation and just cutting off from work is so helpful. It really, you know, it's funny. A lot of times, people take vacation and then realize that they don't like their job and they quit. Like it happens
It
so
happens,
often.
yeah.
They made that realization that like, man, the amount of stress that's this job like did to me, that it forced me to leave the country and like and just really explore who I am as a person. Like it has to be a seriously stressful job for like you to make that decision on vacation to leave, because I see it all the time.
The mental clarity you get. You
The
know?
mental clarity that you get.
Well, we saw it when we were in Thailand. We were taking a train from, I think, Bangkok to Chiang Mai, and we were in a like a bunker,
Sleeper train.
a
Sleeper
sleeper
train.
train, with a guy that was going through exactly that, except he wasn't working for like just anybody. It was his dad's company, and he was
I remember.
he was conflicted because after his vacation he was going to go back and tell his dad that he doesn't want to inherit the
Jeez, yeah, that's that could be a drama in
business.
itself.
It was yeah, no, yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, whenever I solo travel, like when I went to Europe,
Come back on the job or what?
no, like every time I meet someone, I'm like, oh, why are you traveling? It's like, yeah, like I took some time off of work, but I'm thinking of quitting. And like most of the time, they just end up leaving because they, they discover something that, or they have some clarity, and just like, or just don't want. Like sometimes they would be complaining about their work and job the entire vacation. It's like, well, maybe that's a sign that like you should probably leave, right? Because it's consuming your life to a point where you're so stressed out. It's probably time.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's telltale signs. So I think the biggest takeaway here is, if you're currently in a situation where you're feeling burnt, you're managing a incredible workload, and you're stressed, out of your mind, just be okay with taking that vacation if you haven't already. It's good to mentally reset, find clarity. You can't find clarity when you're heads down in the trenches all the time. Yeah. You're too busy being busy, right? So I think whether it's finding clarity and figuring out your next move, or just coming back refreshed and ready to be more productive, like it's highly recommended. Second, I think being okay to step away
Yeah.
from your role.
Yeah.
As we're not encouraging anyone to quit their jobs like necessarily, but you know, if you're in a position where you know the environment just isn't right for you,
Yeah.
or the team environment isn't right for you, maybe you don't leave the company, but you know, start thinking about what those options are to remove yourself from that environment, whether it's a sales high pressure environment
Yeah.
or just a bad manager, bad team, toxic team, right? So I think those are two takeaways. I feel like there was a third in there.
Drawing boundaries.
Boundaries.
Drawing boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah, drawing boundaries.
Yeah, super important, right?
Yeah.
For me, it was I need my sleep, so I can't check emails at night.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or shut down at 5 or take breaks. Like whatever it is for you, you have to set some sort of limits. Because if you don't set any limits, the job will take over.
Yep, it'll take over your life, and we've seen it all happen. So,
Yeah.
well, that's a great way to end it off then,
Yeah.
right?
And off on a high note, the grass is greener on the other side, and you'll make it.
Yeah.
I think that's the takeaway. We're not saving lives, with the exception of any doctors listening to this.
Yeah.
Yes.
You are saving lives, and we thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service.
So, yeah, that's all for now, folks.
Cool. Stay tuned for the next
Stay
one.
tuned for
See you
next
next
one.
time.
See ya.